I have prepared 3 live demonstrations, and some of the features that I'm going to demonstrate are not shown before, so I hopefully everything will be fine. Some of the features that I'm going to show you are almost early development features, so live demos is always a little bit scary. But first, thank you all for coming here today, and it's my pleasure to share a little bit of the things that we have been working on for the last year, but also to take a look in the future of the plans that we have for this year, and also some of the features that we are currently developing. Well, that animation goes fast. One of the biggest new modules that we've developed last year was the introduction of DATPROF Virtualize. And DATPROF Virtualize is a database virtualization solution added to the DATPROF platform. It's fully integrated into runtime. And with database virtualization, we help testers, developers to get the test data even faster within their environment. So what exactly is database virtualization? With database virtualization, testers and developers can have the option to create and restore a snapshot of their test database. So not only the test data itself, but also the complete structure of the database. So all the tables, all the different columns, all the changes, they can easily create a snapshot and go back to a previous snapshot if they want to. The second big benefit of database virtualization is being able to create a clone of a database within seconds. And that's amazing to see. I have prepared a little bit of a demonstration here today, but you can actually clone databases within seconds, so who doesn't want that? So that will be my first demonstration, so I will switch between the software and presentation. And then the screen was gone. I have to duplicate again. Here it is. I hope it's you can see it from the back, but otherwise I will explain a little bit what I'm going to do. So here you can see DATPROF runtime, and I already filled in my username and password because I have one hand with the microphone. Not Pandora this time. So let me log in. So with new versions, this is the wrong runtime. I've got 2 different branches running aside to each other. I have to log into this one. So within this version of DATPROF runtime, you can see under administration the virtualize button. And under virtualize, you can add container hosts. And container hosts are prepared virtual machines that can be running in the cloud, but that can also be installed on-prem on your typical hypervisor. And these virtual machines are provided by DATPROF. That's the virtualize virtual machine. And this virtual machine contains a couple of building blocks like the Docker engine, the virtualization storage layer. And you can connect to these container hosts by filling in the details. And of course, this virtual machine has some storage assigned to it. So in this case, it's a virtual machine that has, I think, 1 terabyte of storage available. And we are currently using almost 300 gigabytes. On this virtual machine, on this container host, you can create containerized databases. And to do it within runtime, you go into a group, you will add an environment. And with previous versions of runtime, you could just connect to your existing database. So your on-prem Oracle database, SQL Server database could be running in the cloud or on-premise. But with virtualize, you also have the option to create a containerized database. So then this Oracle database or this Postgres database is being created in the virtualized VM. You can click the container host, so you can have even more containerized container hosts, so you can spread the load, for example. I'm not going to add it, so I will cancel it, and I will go to this Postgres Gasware database, which is running on my virtual machine. If you have added a containerized environment like this, it is just a typical Postgres database. You can install your subset template, your privacy template, generation template, but it also comes with some extra options called container, which gives you some insight about the status of the container, the logging, etc. But more important, the different snapshots that you have made available to your of your database. So I'm not going to generate a lot of data. I already did that in preparation of today, and of those different steps in my process, I already created some snapshots. So these are the snapshots you can see over here. If you are making changes to your database, as a tester, you can just press the create snapshot, and within 1 or 2 seconds it will create an extra snapshot that you can also go back to. So let's take a look inside of this Postgres database, what the current state is. So I'm opening up dbeaver, which is a popular data browsing tool. I have my Postgres connection already set up. And I've prepared a little query that can find out how much data there is currently in my Postgres database. So for the guys in the back, it's like 84 megabytes. So it's practically completely empty. I have the customer table here, which is completely empty. And only the locations are filled. And I think the location table is like 73 megabytes. Again, I already prepared this live demonstration. So I already created some snapshots. So let's restore one of these snapshots and then take a look inside of the database. So I'm going to restore this third snapshot. I press the restore button. I wait a couple of seconds and it's already done. And we can take a look inside of the database, how much data there is currently in. You can see in the container tab, by the way, that it's already running. So the database is again live. It will quickly stop and reconnect to actually get the new data set in place. So let me refresh this like that. And you can see already that there is a lot more data in this table. So for example, my customer table, I have to refresh again within this screen. My customer table already contains 8.3 gigabytes. So that's quite big. I think it's like 45 million records. And imagine the time that I would have taken if I would have to restore a Postgres backup, going to a DBA, do you want to restore my backup? It will take for ages. So my database current setup is like 22 gigabytes big. So within 1-2 seconds, I did a full restore to a 22 gigabyte big database. I know all of you have terabytes of data, but for me this is quite big. Let's try another snapshot.
These are already virtualized databases.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
did not mention that.
No, this is a virtualized database already, and I created the data set inside of these virtualized database and then created a snapshot of it. Yeah. I have another one, so I will restore the latest one. In next versions, you will also get the option to add some extra information about the snapshot, so maybe a name and a description. Currently, you only have the option of the user that has created the snapshot and the creation date. So let's take a look inside of the database, how big it is now. So previous it was like 22 gigabyte, and within a couple of seconds it has restored to a snapshot of like 150 gigabytes big. Let's refresh the table view. And as you can see, just the customer table is like 63 gigabytes big. It now contains, I think, 345 million records. Yeah. So switching between snapshots is incredibly fast, but what even is more cool about database virtualization is that you can create independent clones of this database. So I have a database with 145 gigabytes of data, and I want to create 2 clones for maybe a fellow tester team or maybe another developer that wants to test on it. So what you can do within runtime is you can go into the container tab over here and you can press the clone as new environment. And you have to specify on which port the database should be running, because otherwise you would have a duplicate. But the great part is that you can also clone this database directly from workflow. So I've created a really small workflow with 2 actions, clone 1 and clone 2. So let me execute it. And then now it will clone a 150 gigabyte database 2 times. So if I would go back to virtualize, I already see the 2 extra environments over here. And now I can create a copy of this connection 2 times. Change the port to 4 and this one to 5. And as you can see that if we are connecting to the database, it has the same amount of data, 63 gigabytes. The other one as well. So we have now 3 clones within a couple of seconds with 150 gigabytes of data. These clones are independent of each other. So if a tester would be changing data, for example, in this customer table, it would not affect the other clones as well. So I can even go and restore, for example, in the first one, I can go back to a previous snapshot. So for example, the first one with the 84 megabytes of data, and this will not affect the other cloned virtualized databases. And the best part is, it doesn't claim extra storage. So it's not only fast, it's also extremely efficient. If I would go take a look inside virtualize and see how much data I'm currently using, I'm still using this almost 300 gigabytes of data. So I'm not claiming the extra 150 times, 150 gigabytes extra disk space. So there's a lot more to cover about DATPROF Virtualized. That's maybe for another time, but this was one of the biggest highlights of last year. I will now return to my presentation again to share a little bit about what we did more and also some of the new things that we are working on. There are questions, of course. Sure. Go ahead.
If you look at the main use cases for this functionality, so I can imagine you can redo a test with a certain instance. I call it instance, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Could you also use these snapshots to, if you have an escape defect, for instance, which goes to production, and you want to look at what you tested before, and do you then have to use 2 different snapshots, or is the data about the processing also a snapshot?
I think both. As a tester or developer, you can pick and choose the point in time in which you want to do the snapshot. And a snapshot is practically free, so it doesn't claim extra storage and it is almost instant. And if you are then changing data, of course these changes has to be stored. So if you will change everything inside the database, then of course these snapshots will be a little bit bigger. But let's say, for example, you are running a test process that manipulates portions of the data and you will find some defects, for example. You can make a snapshot of that as well, but you can also go back to the previous situation to, well, for example, compare what's going on, or make a clone of it, save it for later use. Yeah, so there are several options. I think database virtualization is especially useful for early development, not really acceptance testing.
No.
Could be, but that also depends on the maturity of the organization, because you have to provide your databases using a Docker image. Not every organization is already ready for containerization of databases, so it also depends on that aspect as well. Another question? Yes.
Can I get that virtualize clone information out of DATPROF? As in a port to connect to, a database name, so I can feed it to another system?
I think so, and if not, then we should add it because that's a great idea. But I think the API that we have inside runtime can already fetch detailed information about these virtualized environments, and that provides all kinds of information about the host name, the port that it's running on, username, all that kind of information. So I think so, and otherwise we have to add it.
Okay.
Yes?
Within NIBC, we currently have the issue that we have different applications running on different versions of the SQL databases. Can you create multiple containers on different SQL versions and then use that as your provisioning base?
Yeah. So within the container host, you can upload your own images that you want to use. So you can upload, for example, an image for SQL Server 2022 or 2090, and you can have several instances running with several versions of your database. So that's an option. You only have to bring the data yourself in. It's not like that we virtualize your production database. You will have to create a virtualized database, and then you have to put the data in, and then you can clone it and back up and restore all these snapshot stuff.
You're showing it's already fast and quick. And how much time does it take to set up the first virtual database?
That depends how much time it will cost to get you the data inside of that virtualized database. So in our picture, we see it after masking and subsetting, for example. So you mask a database, you subset it, and then you will use that subset inside the virtualized database, and then you can clone it, for example. But it's a little bit dependent on how fast you get the data, for example, backup of the initial restore inside the virtual machine. And when it's in, then it's practically fast, but the time is the initial restore of the database. Yeah. All right, any more questions about virtualization? Not yet? All right. One of the next big things that we did last year was the introduction of masking, generation, and subsetting for IBM DB2, but especially for the mainframe edition, ZOS. We already support masking, generation, and subsetting for DB2 on iSeries and DB2 on Linux, Unix, Windows. But last year we were able to add this also to the ZOS, to the mainframe platform. So that's all. That's exciting, especially for large finance institutions, banks that are still using the mainframe option. It's a quite unique system in that essence. You would say, well, DB2 is DB2, but the DB2 versions between those different platforms are completely different. I mean, an iSeries is completely different than a mainframe system. So it was quite a hard job to get it all working, because it feels that you are working on technology from the 60s. It's a little bit more modern, but the interfaces and the documentation that you have been working on, that's pretty hard. But we're really excited that we now natively support mainframe as well. Not a lot of vendors that can do that. Another great addition that we've released already this year was the introduction of bulk enable and disable. It was a feature that where several of our clients were asking for. And with bulk enable and bulk disable, testers and developers that are working with privacy can easily disable all of the functions on a table level or even on a schema level. So that makes development of a template more easy. Because here, if you are developing lots of functions and you want to test or deploy a small portion of your template, you can go into project and you will find the enable disable functions, and you can just press, for example, the customer history, and all the functions will be disabled over there, and then you can deploy it without these functions. Nice enhancement. Another great enhancement that we released last year or this year is the introduction of pre-configured generators. Pre-configured generators are generators that you will specify on a project level instead of a specific column. So here you can see a print screen of the generation area, but this also works for masking as well. So let's say you want to implement a specific generator. In my case, I'm using a generator expression with a really specific expression that will generate some data. But I have to implement this generator expression on all different columns in different tables. In previous editions, you would have to specify it all over again, and maybe some of the expression would change in the future, and you would have to update it on all locations. In this version, you can just go to Project, Pre-config Generator, define it once, give it a name, and then it will show up in the list of generators. So practically, you can build your own generators using the other generators that we provide. All right. So that was already a little bit of the improvement that we did already. There are still some improvements planned yet that we have to fix and bring out. But I want to talk about a little bit of the biggest update that we are planning for this year, and that's the introduction of MongoDB support, especially data masking support. MongoDB is currently number 5 in the most popular databases, so it's directly after Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, and I think MySQL, and then you've got MongoDB. And from the NoSQL platforms, it's the most popular one. And MongoDB is a little bit different than your typical relational database. So the approach that we've taken with DATPROF to support data masking is also a little bit different. In your relational database, an Oracle SQL Server database, you would find databases containing tables. The tables contains rows and columns. In a NoSQL database like MongoDB, which is a document store, there are 4 different types of NoSQL databases, but MongoDB contains also databases. But within a database, you would have collections with documents, JSON or BASIN documents, and these documents contains fields. So this is what it looked like. This is a normal relational table with the columns and the rows. Some fields are null, but some are filled. And MongoDB database is different. As you can already see it, there is a bank account number for this document, but it's missing over here. So MongoDB doesn't have a schema. It's schema-less, it's schema-free. That's great for developers because they can build whatever they want. It's sometimes a little bit harder to get data out of it because you have to, some documents have a certain attribute field, some don't. Another big difference is that it can be nested. So because it's a JSON document, you would have the option to create a nested object, for example, one or more addresses. And in a relational database, this would be solved or normalized into 2 or more tables. So because there is lots of difference between a NoSQL database like MongoDB and a relational database, we've chosen a little bit of a different approach to solve the data masking. So with relational databases, we've chosen privacy to import the metadata, the schema from the database, and you would build all kinds of functions on top of that metadata. And we are using SQL statements specialized for each different database that we support to actually make sure the data is masked in place in the database. For MongoDB, we cannot use the schema because there is no such thing as a schema. You could sample maybe all of the documents, but then again, it's not really safe. So we're using a config file, a text file specification in which a user will specify which fields, which collections have to be masked with a certain function, for example. So it's more text file driven, a little bit more technical. Maybe in the future we will add a GUI on top of that as well. But it's also directly integrated into runtime. So you don't have privacy to build a masking template. You would create a specification file inside runtime and you can directly apply it from runtime. We cannot use SQL because it's a NoSQL database, so we have to use something else. We don't want to extract the data out of the MongoDB, so we want to do it in place like we do with the relational databases. So we're using the aggregation pipelines, which is specific for MongoDB, to actually make sure that the data is being masked inside the MongoDB database. So this is my second demo. And this is also a little bit of the more scary part because this is, well, early development. No guts, no glory. All right. So I have created on my container host, on the virtualized image, I also created a MongoDB database. So in my development version, when I add an environment, I can actually choose MongoDB now as an option. And for this one, I already did it. So that's the MongoDB database. It's a little bit different because on a typical environment for Oracle and SQL Server, you could upload your masking template from privacy and from subset. But you don't have that option here because there is no privacy or subset that can help you. You just have to create a specification. In this specification, this is a little bit more technical. It's a YAML file. You can create a masking specification for your database. So I already created one, which is called gasware masking. So let me edit it. And you can see over here, this is a mask specification. Maybe in the future we also add generation specifications or subset specifications. You define the collection, like the table, and then you define the functions. So this is, we've not implemented all of the different bits and pieces around the different functions that we have that will be added in the future. This is a really simple random string generator which will replace all of the existing first names with a random string. Here you can see an example of blanking the salary, but it can be conditionally, so there is a difference between type, and for the type is existing, we will blank the salary. Dependencies is also supported, so you can make sure that certain function runs after another function. Lookup, which is really important if you want to do something chain consistent and you're not using the deterministic option within privacy. Then you can use lookup collections like a value lookup in privacy. And I have a random string for the address, which is a nested object. So you can see here within field addresses.street, then it will mask the nested object. So let me cancel this one and let me showcase the database, the MongoDB database. So this is MongoDB Compass. It's a viewer for MongoDB, and let me make sure this is refreshed. You can see that it contains a couple of documents, JSON documents with first names, last names, bank account number, birth dates, etc. There's also a lookup collection with the original name Halfberg must become treat. So this is like a translation table, but then in MongoDB. So let me start the masking job. Start. You still have the same options over here, so you can also use the API to automate, for example, the masking process. But in my case, I'm going to start it manually. You can see it's masking, and it's already done. It's not a large MongoDB database. 4 modules have been running. You will get all of the details about the modules that have been executed. So let's take a look inside MongoDB to see what's going on. So I will refresh this data, and as you can see, the first name has been replaced with 10 different characters. The last name has been generated by the value lookup. Salary has been removed where type is existing, and here you can see a type prospect and it is still a salary, and the address also has been replaced. So this was early preview of the MongoDB capabilities that we are working on. Other databases will also come. Yeah, really excited about this new feature, new popular database, and let me go back to my demo, or maybe there are some questions about MongoDB. Richard?
How will you validate successful masking?
In specific to MongoDB?
All the different documents that can be in there. So if someone did L name instead of last name in one of the documents.
Yeah, like you also do with relational database, building a masking project is a small software project, so you have to test the outcome as well. So I don't think there are lots of difference. MongoDB is a lot more flexible, so you can apply almost everything inside your pipeline. And if something won't work, it would just skip it and go to the next document. So.
Yeah, but that would still, because otherwise with the relational database you start with the metadata.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a clear picture of literally which data is in there.
Oh,
And
like
in
that.
MongoDB,
Yeah.
You would either have to guarantee that your initial scan is correct,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah, there is some analysis beforehand in which you have to identify where PYY data is being stored, for example. That's currently not part of the current solution. We focus on the implementation part and the masking part. But you would have to have a tool, maybe like a DB Compass. I think DB Compass already has some functionality, for example, to analyze the schema, as you can see over here. So it already gives you some information about which fields there are. So other tools can help you also with that. But maybe in the future we will have a metadata viewer, for example, that will generate the specification part based upon the UI, and maybe we'll do the analyzing of the schema, for example. But that's for the future. Yeah.
When will it be released?
Trick question.
I also ask you the question all the time. When it's finished, you tell
I
me.
always say when it's finished, but we have planned it for around somewhere in the summer. So we already made some great progress,
Summer is
early or late. But
yeah.
yeah.
Depending on the weather.
Which year?
Which year?
This year.
that's summer. Oh, so August 16th.
Oh, that's the trick. You sell it and it will work. Just sell it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was MongoDB. Really excited. Our first NoSQL database. So that's quite something. We are really focused on the relational databases, but we're now stepping outside of it. So that's cool. Another big thing is cloud, because what we are seeing is that test data is not just stored on-prem, but is more and more stored in the cloud. And we all know these big vendors: AWS, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. And I read some research that nowadays 60% of the business data is being stored in the cloud. I could almost not believe it. 60%, that's quite a big number, I think. I'm not sure what it is here in the Netherlands, maybe it's even more, but I was a bit surprised that it's so big. But if you would take a look at these different cloud vendors, they're quite big. Amazon is the biggest one. They have like 31% of the market. Especially in Northern America, Amazon is a little bit bigger than Microsoft. I think in Europe it's the other way around. I think Azure in Europe is more popular. Google Cloud is lagging behind, and there are some small players in the market as well, like Oracle and IBM, who have just 2% of the data, 2% of the marketplace, and the Chinese one. But if you would take a look inside these cloud vendors, how much or what kind of services do they provide to actually store test data? They have a lot of fancy names with, like Amazon Relational Data Store, or AlloyDB, or DocumentDB, or Aurora. Pretty fancy names, but you might not expect it. Most of these names are pretty common technology. So for example, if you would use Amazon RDS, Relational Data Store, then it's just an Oracle or a SQL Server database, maybe a little bit more scalable one, but it's running inside AWS, and it's just a typical database that you already are using on-prem. You can connect to it. Sometimes the connection is a little bit harder because it's open, so it has to be secured, of course. But a lot of these databases we already support. So if I would make a check mark of all of the different cloud databases that you can already use DATPROF for, it's, I'm not sure if it's 50% or even more, but it's a lot. And we are working on MongoDB, so that will automatically also work with the DocumentDB. Azure Cosmos DB is that's a strange one because it implements different APIs. So you can use Cosmos DB using the PostgreSQL API. Then it already works, but you can also use the MongoDB API. So often all these fancy names have some compatibility with existing technology that we already support. There are still things that we have to solve on our side. So for example, with Microsoft Azure, you will see that the SQL Server databases are moving towards not a SQL authentication, but Microsoft Entra ID, which was previously known as Azure AD. That's now called Entra ID. So we have to make sure that from a privacy perspective and a runtime perspective, you can also use Entra ID to connect to your database. So we are working on that as well. Another big thing that we are working on right now is getting some of our products in the marketplace of AWS and Azure. So that's the one thing that I'm working on right now, is getting runtime and virtualize as an image directly available from the marketplace inside AWS or Azure. Can I see some hands who are using AWS or Azure as database services already? Not a lot. Not a lot. Okay. This will make it easier to maybe try out our product. Just go to Amazon, create a login, link your credit card, and then it's quite expensive. All right. So that was the cloud. Want to improve the database support, especially from the cloud perspective, but also from the on-prem perspective. The last one. Also a big one. I also prepared a little demo about that one as well, and that's security. Because we noticed with all of you guys, security is so important. It's not only the reason why you implement privacy, for example, but we also see it, for example, within runtime, asking questions with a web-based test data portal. How is security handled? Can you use LDAP to log in? Last year we released a complete new permission model inside runtime, and there are still lots of things that we can add within runtime to make it more safe and more practical to use from a security perspective. So there are 3 things that we are working on. The first thing is package protection, and this is more of the combination between subset and privacy and runtime itself. So when you are using subset and privacy, you can generate a package directly from subset, and it will contain the metadata and all of the different templates, how it should execute that masking job on the database. You can upload it within runtime, you can execute it in runtime, and then runtime will do all of the different SQL statements and extra steps to actually get the data masked. There is a small risk when you are generating a package on a network drive, for example, and someone else would open that zip file and make some changes inside of it, maybe change the SQL code or add an extra script to it, and then that package is uploaded into runtime. It will generate some malicious code because someone hacked the package. What we are doing with package protection is that when the package is being generated directly from privacy and subset, it will be signed with a public-private key, and runtime administrators can use that public key inside runtime to make sure that certain packages are trustworthy and can only be installed from trusted places. So if maybe something has changed within a package, it will be blocked by runtime depending on your settings. So we think that's a great security measure to protect the privacy packages and the subset packages that come out of privacy and subset. The other one is the audit trail. I'm skipping to FA because that is my demo. Audit trail is not about audit reports, because we already, I think, create some awesome audit reports with privacy. But audit is about which user is going to apply certain rules in runtime. So if they change, for example, configurations, the database setting, or they upload a new package, or they delete a certain object, or they change permissions of a user, all these different actions will be logged inside a file or a database table. And if something goes wrong, maybe by accident or by purpose, you can inspect that audit log, what's going on inside runtime, have something changed by who, and you will get a trace of all the different changes.
Is that runtime only? Because we already mentioned privacy that it has it, but all the different tiles that apply, is it?
Yeah, it is especially for the test data portal, because the test data portal is multi-user, so multiple users can log in within runtime and do, depending on their permissions, can access all different parts of runtime. And privacy is typically one user that will build a masking template. So that building of a masker template is not being audit logged, for example. Could be a good addition, but that's also a little bit more in version control, I think. So this is more on the configuration part of runtime. If the configuration is being changed, that is logged. Yeah. And another one that was also feedback from one of our clients was two-factor authentication support within runtime. This one is almost finished, so let me give you a demonstration, and then that's my last demonstration, and then you will take it away. All right. Let me log in again. And for now, my 2FA settings has been disabled. I've not configured it yet. So to enable two-factor authentication with my phone, for example, I can go to my profile over here. And then I've got a new option, 2FA settings. And currently my 2FA is disabled. And to enable it, I click the Enable 2FA, which will start the setup. Then you will get your phone, your typical, what is it? Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator or Authy, or I have an app on my phone as well. And I can scan the QR code like this. I already had it. There it is. And to complete the 2FA setup, I have to enter my password again. And now I have to enter the 2FA code that I have provided on my phone. So let me wait till I get a new one. 598330. Verify. And now it's enabled. You will get a recovery code, so in case you will lose your phone, for example, or you forgot to make a backup of your Authenticator app and you will get a new phone, make sure to actually save this recovery code. So let me copy and paste it into Notepad. Really safe place to store it. And let me log out again, and now log in. I have to still use my username and password, but now it's asking for my 6-digit 2FA code. You have to make sure that runtime and your phone are using the same time, because my phone is now generating a code every 30 seconds. So the timing should be the same. So if runtime is wrongfully configured and it's using a different time zone, then it would not work because the time overlapsing is not correct. The great part about this system is that runtime doesn't have to be connected to the internet. So it still can be in a safe location, not connected to the internet, but the 2FA still works. So I think that's a great thing. So that's the login procedure when using 2FA. I can show you the procedure if I would have lost my phone. I will log in again. No access to your authenticator app, and I can copy and paste my recovery code. And after you use a recovery code, 2FA will be disabled, so you have to enable it again. From an administration area, you will see an overview which users have been configuring 2FA, and in future versions there will also be an option to enforce 2FA. So you can make sure that certain administrators make sure that, maybe depending on their role, we're not sure yet, but enforcing the 2FA on users before they can actually do something inside runtime. All right.
Can you disable the recovery module for anything that's not an administrator?
Administrators can disable them. So in case of emergency, an administrator can also disable the 2FA for a specific user. And it's optional, so yeah.
No, I meant,
Oh.
so if I'm a regular user using it, I don't want my regular users to have the option to even use a recovery code. Just if you lost your phone, you call me, right, as an administrator.
Oh, like that.
Yeah.
Could be a good suggestion. So not thought of it, but have to think it through. Discuss it with the security team as well, because there are some implementation. But yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I know our security team that's the first question they're going to ask.
Okay, they want to.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for the feedback. Anything else? Other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. And then I will give the floor to Yuri.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuri. I'm sure most of you already know me, but if you're working with our software and you've ever experienced any issues, usually when you mail us, I'm the first person you reach out to. So I've talked with a lot of you, I've worked together with a lot of you, and I'm here today to walk you through one of the new developments regarding one of the most important aspects of our tools, you, the users, and kind of more specifically, the skills and knowledge available to you as the users. I hear a lot of people say that we're living in an age of AI revolution, but as far as I'm concerned, we still need smart users in order to implement great TDM. So over the last year, we've been very busy to make it so that maintaining a high level of test data management within your organization doesn't have to be difficult, especially as the years go by and perhaps your team loses members or gains members, holding on to that high level of expertise becomes easier. So let's think of a hypothetical. Imagine you're working with our software and you're trying to create a template. If you're struggling trying to implement either a new feature or a more complex type of feature, or you're really trying to get more out of the software and it's simply not working, usually the only option you have in order to resolve that is to consult the technical documentation. And I think the technical documentation really is a great resource. It's super extensive. It contains a lot of information, a lot of examples. However, it's also very difficult to read, and there's a lot of it, and it gets very tiring very quickly. I say that as someone who nowadays writes most of it, so perhaps it's my fault. Another alternative is, if you feel like you're lacking the skills to work with our tools or you want to learn more, is taking on a teacher-led course to learn more about DATPROF's tools. However, this is really a big investment. Imagine you want to take on a teacher-led course, you need to plan it, you need to get approval, it takes several weeks in order to plan things out, and really, if you have a problem at a specific moment and you want to resolve it in that time, it's not really a fix. So we've decided that we need kind of a new avenue of learning how to work with the tools, and that's the DATPROF Academy. So the DATPROF Academy, in one sentence, is an online self-study certification website, which is a companion to available resources. You've heard me say that there's flaws with the documentation, but we believe that that's still a great resource. It's very useful, especially for things like edge cases, or if you want to look up perhaps how to work with something very difficult or very niche. Also, a teacher-led course is arguably the best way to learn the tools. We have some great teachers who can learn who can teach you everything about the software and adjust it specifically for your company, which is great. However, there's kind of another need for people who want to be able to learn at their own pace. Perhaps you're working with privacy and you want to learn more about data masking, or you want to learn more about synthetic data generation, but you don't feel the need to sit through an entire course on all the DATPROF tools your organization uses. So this platform is accessible as a web-based kind of platform that you can sign up to, sign up for certifications, walk through various lessons, which are either videos or exercises, and contain all of the information you would need to learn about our tools at various skill levels. And it's designed to be easily accessible for learners of all levels. If you wanted to learn about, for instance, data masking and privacy, and you have no experience in IT, you have no experience working with privacy, we even have a course that I'm sure all of you could easily pass in a matter of an hour, just to get to know privacy and kind of learn the basic concepts. So, as you can see here, this is kind of an example of my certificate for data masking, which proves I'm very good at it. I think it would be a good idea to kind of look at how we've designed this. So this is kind of the basic idea. We wanted to break up all the functionality of our tools into various learning paths. And what this means is that we start from kind of an approach where we want to learn the tools, very basically. So let's say I want to learn about privacy. Then in the top right, you can see the DATPROF Privacy Explorer certification. As I said, this one's very easy, very simple. If you've decided, all right, well, I want to pick up data masking, that's my role within this organization, or I want to pick up synthetic data generation, you can then follow on with progressively harder certifications that teach you more and more. So, whereas the Explorer certification is really very basic, is designed to show you from a high level how is it designed, how is it intended to work, and takes you through kind of the easiest flow there is. So for privacy, that would be creating a project, importing metadata, adding maybe one or two functions, and then executing a project. If we were to move on to the practitioner certification for data masking, we take a big leap where we teach you how to work with all the various types of functions, how to work with things like dependencies, how to combine multiple functions together, and kind of teach you how to work with every individual aspect of privacy. Moving on, we want to make certifications that prove a certain level of skill. So how to work out particular concepts, how to get certain outcomes, how to really get the most out of the software. And we think that breaking it up into kind of various paths that only fit the role that you want to learn or that you feel is useful, that progressively gets harder, is kind of the best way to do this. And the state we're in right now is we've created the DATPROF Privacy Explorer certification and the Data Masking Practitioner certification. And we're seeing that so far a number of people have signed up. The first people are starting to graduate, and we'll be kind of rolling out more and more of these certifications as we go on. As you can see here by the arrows, there is kind of a vague path that's suggested to follow. So if you start with runtime administration, we assume you want to go on with more complex runtime administration, but you can also say, all right, well, I want to do runtime administration and subsetting and data masking and synthetic data generation. And it's even the idea that if you know how to do everything, then you get the most exclusive type of certification to be a suite expert. So you really know what you're talking about. And this has some benefits, not just for customers, but also for instance, if you're trying to work with our tools and you need a partner to be involved, right? You need, let's say, a few people who are really good at working with privacy. By making sure that we standardize our certification and that we use exams to test knowledge, that if you're working with a partner, you can kind of validate upfront that they have a certain level of knowledge. I think it's a good idea to kind of go through the website, kind of click around, and I'll show you what you can expect. One-handed typing. Yeah. All right. So now that we're on the Academy page, you can see that we have two of the certifications at the moment. We have the basic certification and the data masking practitioner certification. The idea of this website is that you can sign up, have your own account, and kind of track your own progress. So if I want to, for instance, subscribe to the privacy basic training, I can simply click here, get kind of an overview of what's in the certification, pretty basic, and enroll. Then I can just create an account and start learning. And the idea is that the basic certifications, the Explorer certifications, are free because we want as many people possible to kind of get a feel for the tools. Even if you're not going to be working with them, having kind of a basic overview of how it's designed to work can really help you, even if you're more on the business side of things. So if we go to one of the other certifications, we can see that the complexity increases very quickly. So we start by going into all the various concepts. What is data privacy? What is DATPROF privacy? What are some of the core principles? And then we start at very basic, creating your first project, and going all the way through all the advanced features there are, even the more complex ones, like things like working with regular expressions, custom expressions, how to get the most out of the script manager to execute either SQL or command line scripts. And as we go on, you attain kind of more and more of a feel of how to work with the various tools. And at the end of this, once everything has been talked about and you've kind of seen everything and maybe have had a chance to practice with some of the concepts we've discussed, there's a data masking exam, which is a multiple choice exam, which if you pass it successfully, you can automatically receive your certification and include it on things like LinkedIn, etc. So if I log into my own account, let me put down the microphone really quickly. All right. So now if I scroll down, you can see that all of my progress has already been saved. And you can see that if I wanted to, I could view the certificate that I've earned. There we go. And if we go back to the certification, we can look at kind of some of the lessons as well, what they look like, what you can expect. So currently it's kind of divided into two main types of videos. We have, for instance, if we go to the regular expression video, and there we go, I'll put it on mute for now, but we have kind of more high-level overviews of how things are supposed to work. Things like regular expressions are kind of hard concepts to kind of grasp if you're starting out with. So we start out by kind of going for a very basic approach of explaining what it is, how it's supposed to work, kind of giving some more illustrated examples, and then we move on by showing what we want to achieve in privacy, and then we go into the software, we demo it, I show you how to do these various things, and then you can replicate this on your own side. And once we've gained this knowledge, we try and retain it by doing things like intermittent quizzes, asking questions, and kind of reinforcing that knowledge. So as you can see, as I go on here, eventually we go over in privacy and I give explanations on everything and kind of walk people through things. And for a lot of people, this is a more organic way of learning compared to reading the documentation. Having someone explain things to you in kind of a human language generally works a bit better. Another example of a lesson could be, for instance, if we go over all the way to the start, let's try this one. Our videos where I just explain things in front of a camera. So we go into kind of more basic concepts and I have a presentation and things are nicely edited so that it's more interesting to kind of watch. So if I go over to the exam as well, let me see if I can retake it here. I'm unallowed to retake it. Well, that's fine. But this is just a multiple choice. It's designed to be pretty hard, but if you follow all the lessons, you pay attention, it's very, very doable, even as a kind of a first-time privacy user. So, moving forward, the idea is to kind of expand on this, create more certifications, make the certifications we have more complete, more examples, and kind of make the whole learning experience for DATPROF's tools a lot more organic, which has some big benefits for if you're an organization who has a TDM team. Time passes. Once people join up with your team, you get new employees, it's a lot easier to onboard them by just letting them take kind of an easy certification to work with our tools. And we really want to motivate our customers to try this out. So if you look behind you, there's a desk with all the goodies. There's also a flyer that you can take that has an action code that you can use when signing up to the Academy, and all of you can attempt to take the data masking practitioner certification free of charge. And we really want to encourage you to do this, not just because we want you to learn how to use the tool even better, but also because we would really like the feedback. Because you're all very experienced with our tools, most of you know how to work with our tools quite well, your feedback is very valuable to us. All right, that's pretty much my piece, what I have to say. Are there any questions about the Academy as of now?
Yeah. When are the next ones coming live?
Soon. Not soon enough, though. All right.
Thank you so much, Yuri.